Hello friends, hi, welcome to Biju Guys Teaching Cafe. Friends, this is a short video lecture on the theme People, Institutions, Forces and Key Ideas behind Behavioralism in Political Science. People, institutions, forces and key ideas behind behavioralism in political science. So friends, behavioralism prevailed in political science from 1940s to the 1970s. So it was probably Clifford Dwight Waldo. He was an American political scientist and is perhaps a defining figure in the modern study of public administration. He perhaps coined the word behavioralism in a book called Political Science in the United States. The book was published in the year 1956. But it was Charles Mariam. He was an American professor of political science at the University of Chicago. He was the founder of behavioralism in political science. He trained many graduate students in the United States who later became top-class, world-class political scientists, intellectuals. Charles Mariam was an advisor to several US presidents. Even upon his death, the New York Times reported that one of the outstanding political scientists in the country. So he is a doyen in the world of behavioral studies and political science. And friends, it was Charles C. Mariam. He was really an intellectual force behind the rise of behavioralism in political science. He was in the University of Chicago, and the University of Chicago is also a very important source of political science. He was working in the University of Chicago, and in the 1920s and 30s, in the decades 1920s and 30s, where Charles C. Mariam emphasized the need for examining political behavior of individuals and groups in order to understand political phenomenon rather than resorting upon historical, legal and institutional framework. And in the 1921, in the University of Chicago, you can see a series of manifesto had been published for a new science of politics, which implied a departure from historical approach and legal institutional approach embraced by traditional political scientists. And it was Charles C. Mariam. He was the real force behind this manifesto for a new science of politics. So the publication was followed in the year 1923, 24 and 1925. And later a series of national conferences on the science of politics was held, which were important even behind the rise of this discipline. Then in the USA, you can see that the Social Science Research Council was established. Friends, this was world's first national organization of all the social sciences. It was world's first organization that comprises social science disciplines. In India, you can see ICSR, Indian Council for Social Science Research. It is the nodal agency for social science disciplines in India. Likewise, in the USA, it is Social Science Research Council was founded. And it was basically the recommendation, suggestion of the Charles C. Mariam that America needs an organization like Social Science Research Council in order to push social science research with a scientific temper, with a scientific foundation. And later you can see the famous Chicago School of Political Science was founded. It was an important and influential agency for research and scholarship in political science in the 1920s and 30s. So you have seen, University of Chicago, the contribution of Charles C. Mariam, the establishment of Social Science Research Council, Chicago School of Political Science. But friends, the real force, the key figure behind the popularity of behavioralism in political science goes to none other than David Easton. David Easton was born in 1917 and he died in 2014. He was a Canadian-born American political scientist who was born in Toronto, Ontario, came to United States in 1943, and from 1947 to 1997 he served as the professor of political science at the University of Chicago. You see, by the time David Easton came to USA and became a professor of politics at University of Chicago, that was 1947, 1997, you can see tremendous changes were taking place in the world. And you can see World War I, World War II, Cold War, and the rise of fascist ideologies during the interwar period. But when looking at all these, new events, new phenomenon, new issues emerging, David Easton has found that political science with its old methodologies, old way of viewing and seeing is in a losing position because its methodologies such as historical, philosophical, institutional, legal, frameworks are not enough to understand why World War I, why World War II, or why fascism. You can see, so David Easton was looking around, why, how to change political science in a new direction, how to push political science, into with a new insight which can better understand the problems of our day. So you can see World War I between 1914 and 1918. Historians tell you that the reasons for World War I was MEINA, that is MAINA, that is an acronym which says that militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, and assassinations. See, but the traditional methodologies of political science is not in a position to understand the complexities of militarism, alliances, imperialism, why nationalism, why leaders are being assassinated, what is the motive behind. See, these kinds of things cannot be studied with the old way of seeing and viewing in political science. So you can see the rise of fascism in interwar period, Italy and Germany witnessed what may be called Nazism between 1918 and 1939. So fascism and Nazism are ideologies which are basically anti-foundationalist ideologies, that they never believe in any kind of established order, established ideas, established value systems. That they are nihilist. Fascists are nihilist. They never believe in human beings. They never believe in established institutions. They have some different kind of worldview. So the traditional way of seeing and viewing in political science definitely will not understand why fascism, why fascists are basically nihilist, why fascists are basically anti-foundationalist, why fascists do have lesser faith in human nature. See, these are new issues emerging in political science which our old way of seeing and viewing cannot understand in a proper light. So David Easton is looking, what is happening in political science, and he found that World War II occurred, that was between 1939 and 1945, and historians cite several reasons like the Treaty of Versailles following World War I, its implementation, the dissatisfaction it caused, the worldwide economic depression, and the failure of appeasement, the rise of militarism in Germany and Japan, the failure of League of Nations. So these were the reason historians cite for World War II. But the traditional way of seeing and viewing in political science will not be in a position to understand why this happened, why these kinds of things pushed the world into a world war. Right. So David Easton was little bit dissatisfied with the old way of seeing. So he believed that our methodology cannot understand these kinds of issues. And Cold War occurred between 1947 and 1991. Historians cite several reasons for Cold War, like tension between two superpowers, that is USA and USSR, and each country never believed the other. So the suspicion, hostility, tensions, the ideological conflict between the US and the USSR, the emergence of nuclear power or nuclear weapon, fear of communism, even the rise of communism in USA. See, these are new issues. You need a different lens, you need a different spectacle to look at these kinds of issues. Your old methodologies, please keep it away. It will not give you any kind of explanations why this happened. Right. So it is in this point David Easton has come out with some interesting kind of observations in political science. And he proposed an 8 principle. He himself called this as the intellectual foundation stones of behavioralism. The intellectual foundation stones of behavioralism. And David Easton says, research in political science should follow these parameters. Only then political science can understand some of the major issues facing the world. And these 8 principles are still relevant. I can explain this one by one for all of you. First one, David Easton says it is regularities, that is generalization and explanations of regularities. What is this? He is saying that some uniformities in human behavior can be observed, discovered and found. These uniformities or regularities in human behavior can lead political scientists to some broad generalizations to explain human behavior, such as why people commit suicide, why people go for violence, why there are unemployment, how education and economic prosperity are connected, how education and unemployed are connected, how poverty and economy is connected. These kinds of connections, cause and effect can be explained in a better way by using behavioral studies. That's why he is insisting that there are certain observable regularities in the behavior of people. A political scientist should try to find these regularities in the way people behave. Right. And second point, verification. That is, political science should commit to verification, the ability to verify the generalization you proposed. You said that there are regularities, that is generalizable regularities, and these generalizable regularities in the behavior of people should be verified. That is, uniformities or generalization should be valid, which means that is testable. These regularities should be testable, at least in principle, with reference to some other relevant behavior. Right. It should be subject to your regularities or generalization should be subject to checking and rechecking. You should repeat that activity so that you can propose valid theories. And third, he proposed techniques. Friends, it's an interesting observation. He is proposing that political scientists should develop some kind of acceptable method of viewing and seeing. So, some acceptable public standard should be developed in order to study political phenomena. That is observation, recording of events, analyzing behavior. That is methodological techniques. So you should develop sampling techniques. You should develop interview technique. You should develop panel studies. You should go to the field, talk to the people. But when you talk to the people, it is not like a coffee table discussion. You should talk very formally with a questionnaire, and the questionnaire should be set in a way that the answer to particular question will give explanation to a problem that you have discovered before you went to interview that person. So that way, everything should be connected. That's why techniques he proposed as a very important cornerstone of behavioralism in political science. And he said, and our fourth point, quantification. That is, your result, your observation, your generalization, your theory should be expressed, communicated in quantifiable way. That is, you should have studied things that can be explained in quantities or numerical or mathematical models. Uniformities or generalization you have obtained through observation, through some precise methods, should be measurable for a particular purpose. So it should be quantified. It should be quantified either in numbers or in symbols, as it is done in natural sciences. That is called quantification. Then he proposes values. Friends, it's a very important, observation in behavioralism, that, you should keep certain ethical standards when you go for research. You should be, studying things empirically, and should be distinct, so that a behavioral scholar does not start with any preconceived notions or values. For example, you are highly moral in your social relationship, and you see you are a believer in a particular religion, and your religion tell you that prostitution is an offense, it's a sin, and you are a researcher in political science, and you go to study the problems of prostitution. See, you cannot propose a good theory. Why? Because morally you believe that prostitution is a sin, and when you go to study the problems of prostitution, you will have that morality first. You will see the problems of prostitution through the moral worldview. So you can never propose a good theory. So Davidson says that you should set aside, you should keep apart all your moral perspectives or your value systems in your heart, that you should keep away and go straight to the field, and you should be neutral, objective, and study things in a value-free worldview. Right. So that is values, fifth point. And he proposes a sixth point, that is systematization. That is, there should be close connection between the theory you proposed and the actual data you collected. That is, there should be connection between research and theory. There is close interrelation between the coherent body of data you collected and the theory you proposed. Research must be theory oriented, and theory should be well supported by data. If you are going to say that Americans will vote for Republicans or Democrats, you should have sufficient data. Or if you are going to say that next election BJP will win, you should have sufficient data to prove that. Otherwise you are not at all a political science scholar. You should you are believing in BJP or Congress, and you are simply saying that yes, Congress will win the general election or the BJP will win the general election. It's like layman talk. It's not the way political scientists should speak. You should speak with the data. That is what Davidson says. And see friends, seventh point, pure science. See, he is saying that you should make political science an action science or an applied science. Behavioralism put greater emphasis on developing political science as a pure science. You should conduct basic research, find solutions to the problems, right? So your theory should address the urgent the problems that has greater value in your society, that needs greater attention. So that's why he is insisting that political scientists should try to develop political science as a pure science. And the eighth point, he proposes that it is integration. So friends, Davidson is believing that okay, you are going to the field, but political man is not the only man in the society. The only dimension of his life is not political life. If you are a social animal, you will have a political dimension to your life, social dimension, historical dimension, psychological dimension, economic dimension, geographical dimension, cultural dimension, even science. You have health problems, so science come, health science come. So lot of things will come together into your life, which all shape our behavior. So if you are a student of political science and you are going to the field to study a particular phenomenon, you should integrate political science with all other subjects, all other relevant subjects, by which you will get a sound and exact idea about what is the problem with the man. So it believes, that is integration. Davidson says interrelationship of all the social sciences are important in order to make political science interdisciplinary. So the political man can be understood as a whole by linking the political man with the social man, the cultural man, the economic man, the religious man, the psychological man. Right. So he proposed some very interesting observation about political science, that he proposed an 8-point principle. He himself called it is the intellectual foundation stones of behavioralism. This was the contribution of David Easton. And you can see there are some other contributions by Gabriel Almond. Gabriel Almond was an American political scientist. He had some pioneering work in the area of comparative politics, political development and political culture. And he proposed some theories in behavioralism, which we will discuss in a later video lecture. Then comes Robert A. Dahl. He was a political theorist, a political scientist, a sterling professor of political science at the famous Yale University in USA. He also had some interesting contributions to behavioral movement in political science. He proposed certain models of analysis in political science based on the principles of behavioralism. And friends, there are some other things that really contributed to the development of behavioralism was some philanthropic organization. America is famous for philanthropic organization. As you know, there are Rockefeller, Dale Carnegie, Ford Foundation. These kinds of organization finance research in USA, unlike Europe. The problem in Europe is that you will not get enough necessary fund those days for conducting social science research. But unlike Europe, in USA, there are a lot of financial philanthropic organization which fund your research. So they are grants making organization. So therefore, by 1930s, you can see that during the Nazi and fascist repression in Europe, many scholars migrated to USA in search of fun, in search of a better life, in search of better scholarly work, and where they get acceptance, they get a fund from these kinds of organizations. That's why behavioralism became an intellectual movement in political science. Friends, with this lecture, I am trying to wind up this video lecture. I am trying to wind up the key ideas with this brief video lecture. People, institution, forces and key ideas behind behavioralism in political science. Friends, please drop some comments or questions or your opinion regarding the lecture in the comment box so that we can make it interactive. Friends, thank you. Bye.